Chapter 2. Harold pulled up in front of the Lee residence just ahead of Marcus. It was a two-story home with a circular driveway, and several people stood watching on the road and in the yards of the surrounding houses. He could hear yelling through the open door, and there was PJ. He was a big man, maybe 6'5", he thought, and likely more than 300 pounds of solid muscle. He wore blue jeans and a faded maroon shirt, and with his beard, he resembled a mountain man, the kind of man Marcus knew wasn't about to go quietly. Once he made up his mind about something, he wouldn't go down without a fight. "PJ, step back now," Harold called out ahead of him. Marcus started up the walkway at a run. He could see a terrified Belinda standing behind her plump mother, who was looking freaked out. Emotions were high, and PJ gave nothing to Harold, appearing unready to comply. "PJ, step back," Marcus shouted. "Last warning, you hear? This isn't how to handle this." He didn't take his eyes off PJ, who was now standing toe-to-toe with Douglas Lee, Belinda's father, a much shorter man. "It's about time you got here, Sheriff," Douglas snapped. "This crazy man threatened Belinda and us. We've asked him to leave over and over. I want him arrested. Get him the hell off my property." PJ didn't move a muscle or pull his gaze from Belinda, and another second passed before he lifted his hands and stepped back with a shake of his head and a murderous look in his eyes. Could Marcus blame him? Hell no. But at the same time, he had to get through to him that his brand of justice wasn't going to fly. "You gonna come easy now, or do I need to cuff you, PJ?" Marcus called, his cuffs already out. Harold stepped in, maneuvering Douglas Lee back. The man was still carrying on, and Belinda and her mom were close to hysterics. This had become a shit show, just one more thing he had to handle, but all he could do was give everything to PJ as he dragged his gaze over to him. He was pissed off, angry. Yeah, he wanted heads to roll. It was there in the look he gave Marcus before darting a glance back over to Belinda, who was still standing behind her mother, terrified. "You hear what I said to you, girl?" PJ said. "I asked you nicely. You and I both know that you know who supplied what drugs, and you know what my son took and who it was from. I want the names of the kid and the parents responsible for that drug, and I will have them." Marcus had his hand on the man's solid arm. "PJ," was all he said, and he didn't know why, but the man relented. Marcus shoved his cuffs back in his pouch and led PJ away, over to the sidewalk, where his vehicle was parked at an angle, the door open. "You can't be taking matters into your own hands, showing up here and scaring the hell out of that girl and her parents. This has to stop, PJ. I know you want answers, and I understand the answers you want," he said. The neighbors were still staring, their phones up, likely videoing everything he was doing. "Hey, y'all, show's over. Go on home now," he snapped. He was so tired of people standing around, gawking and taking enjoyment in the misery of someone who had lost a son. "Look, you can't be doing this," he continued. "We talked about this." PJ was leaning against his car, his arms crossed over his massive chest. He was the kind of man Marcus would never want to go any rounds with, not anywhere. Cop or not, he never wanted to be on PJ's bad side. He was well aware people were still watching and listening despite his orders. "You're telling me to stay out of something that is very much my business?" PJ said. "My son is dead because of a bunch of snot-nosed, privileged kids pushing their parents' drugs. Jackson wasn't into drugs, you know that. He was a good kid. What happened was murder. You know it, and I know it, and everyone who's responsible knows it. I told you I wouldn't sit on by and do nothing. I want answers for everything, and I've yet to get 'em. The DA tried to blow me off. And then there's you, Marcus. You know what I'm talking about. If the roles were reversed, I doubt you'd rest until you knew who did what. I want names, and I'm not asking any more." What the hell was he supposed to say to that? The man was completely right. Chapter 2. Harold pulled up in front of the Lee residence just ahead of Marcus. It was a two-story home with a circular driveway, and several people stood watching on the road and in the yards of